So today will be session 3 of the Garden Entrepreneurship webinar. And our presenter today will be Dr. Jessica Apple Farmer. We will follow the same methodology as we did in the last 2 sessions. We will have her presenting the topic, and then we are going to have 15 minutes to questions and responses. In the same time, you will be able to ask questions in the chat. Thank you, and let's welcome Jessica.
Hi. All right, so today when I'm discussing selecting what, as we start our gardening activity and selecting what we want to go through and grow, I'm going to begin by just talking about some seeds, and as right after Christmas time, thinking about what we want to grow in our garden. I'll talk about the plant hardiness zones, figuring out what we can grow where we live. We'll go through some tips on how we start seeds indoors. I'll give you some examples of applying what we've discussed in the previous Zoom meetings to my garden and yours as they're getting started. I'll discuss about garden management. So I do a gardener's journal so that I'm just that type A. I keep up with what all I'm doing. I like to plan it all out. And I'll show you an example of that. Show how I make row identification markers for when I put seeds in my garden. And I'll begin talking a little bit about companion plants, and you'll hear more about that from a few of the other speakers. So right after New Year's, if you go into any store, especially your hardware stores, like your big box stores like Lowe's and Home Depot and some other places, they start putting seeds out. And you see these great big seed displays. And I don't know about you, but I get so excited about that. So I've got this little squirrel that's up here because this is me as I'm starting to think, oh my gosh, what kind of seeds are out here? What do I want to grow? What do I want to eat? Because I'm so ready to eat tomatoes. And what I want to do with my little girl. So when seeds become available, I'm out there purchasing seeds early on, just starting to plan and think about my garden. Now, there's more.
Sorry, mute, Jessica. Good. Sorry.
Okay. So other than the big box stores like Lowe's and Home Depot, there's the smaller stores like Ace Hardware, some of your local farm supply stores and co-ops. I like to go through and find out what some of the older farmers in the area, where they go and buy their seeds. Because if you can see this picture up here in the upper right-hand corner, this antique seed bins, places where you can go through and buy seed by the scoop. They might not give you the large varieties like what you're seeing down here below, but the nice thing about those is typically those seeds are what your local farmers are buying, and that's a variety that does really well in your area. And it's also much less expensive to go through and purchase those. So when you're thinking about seeds, think about, what does your family like to eat? You know, my family, we love to eat tomatoes. My husband, I can get him to eat some salad and he'll eat some cucumbers. And my little girl, she absolutely loves pickles. So start looking at things that you might want to go through and eat to put out in your garden. If you have small kids that are around, think about vegetables that they might enjoy eating. My little girl, she doesn't like to eat vegetables if they're in front of her, but if it's something she can pick out of the garden, it's so much fun to go through and eat that. Now, I've talked a little bit about seeds here, but in the next section, Dr. Nadia Tyndall is going to go through and talk about heirloom seeds. Now, these seeds are going to be ones that after the plant grows up, you can save those seeds and use those to reseed the next year. So when you're putting plants in your garden, or you're thinking about what kind of plants you want to put in your garden, you need to figure out what can live and grow in your zone. Now here in Missouri, we have 3 major hardiness zones. We have zone 5, so that's this pale blue at the top. So this is actually 5B, because each one, while you have 5, 6, and 7, each one of them can be divided up into an A and a B region. So we have zone 5B up here with the light blue in northern Missouri. We have 6A for the majority of central region. We have 6B for southern Missouri. And then down here at the bottom of the boot hill, we're going through and we have zone 7. So what this tells us about these hardiness zones is how cold does it get in the wintertime. And it also lets you know, if you look at this picture of the seed packet, these zones kind of give you an idea of where and when you go through and plant different fruits and vegetables. But each zone is going to have a different planting time. Now for here, this is an example of the back of a reddish packet. So these seeds, as you can tell here at the bottom, it says that they be sure to sow these in the open ground in well-exposed soil whenever it's warm. And by looking at this packet, I can see Missouri here is this gray color, and they recommend that you go through and plant these between March and May. And here it gives you another date, August. What this means is that you can have a fall garden as well. And you want to plant these in your fall garden around August so that you have plenty of time to go through and harvest them before it gets too cold. Now, most seeds can go through and be planted indoors. The advantage to plant, why would you want to start your seeds indoors? Well, this gives you the possibility of getting a jump on the growing season. I know in February and March, I'm going through and I'm so excited to put a garden in that I just can't wait. And I'm ready to start these indoors in a southern facing window. Now, most plants you start out about 4 to 6 weeks before your last frost date. For us, the last frost date is around the middle of April. Now, this is just kind of a rough estimate. The exact dates you'll be able to find on the back of the seed packet. What you see over here in table 2 from your Gardenpreneurship journal or guide is that it says, like broccoli, you can start between 5 and 6 weeks before the last frost date. Watermelon, 4 to 6. The vast majority of things are going to be between 4 to 6 weeks. Now, when you go through and start your seedlings indoors, some big picture tips that are important to help you be more successful: purchase your seeds from a trusted source. I say this because sometimes you can get some old seeds that were maybe not stored well. And if you're going through all the effort to start your seeds indoors because you're excited about your garden, it would be really disappointing if you went to all that work and nothing came up. So purchase your seeds from a trusted source. Start with seed starting mix to give you a jump on the nutrient need, as well as making sure that there's the right amount of moisture content that can be held in there. Make sure that your containers have drainage holes. If you go through and don't have a drainage hole in the bottom of your container, it's going to hold water and they're going to be moldy and you won't get any germination, or much less germination. Make sure you plant your seeds at the proper depth. If you go through and you plant your seeds too deep, you're not going to go through, or you're going to have a much less chance of having them breach the surface. If they are too shallow, you're not going to have as strong of roots. Number 5, after you go through and sow your seeds, put your containers in a warm location. This is going to speed up and give you more successful germination. Make sure that you keep that seed starting mix nice and moist. Now you don't want it so moist that it's going to go through, that it's holding water and you have mold, but you need to keep it moist so that those seeds can germinate. And as soon as your seedlings start to go through and pop through the surface of the soil, as soon as they start emerging, make sure that you put those pots in a well-lit location. So you might want to go through and use a south-facing window so that they get plenty of sunlight and so you can get plenty of growth. Once these seeds have come out and they've germinated, put them in a cool room temperature so that they're not drying out too fast. Also, if you're going to be fertilizing these seedlings, you want to start fertilizing at the very beginning. So begin fertilizing them weekly so that you get a balanced level of growth. And once your seedlings have 2 sets of leaves on them, it's time to go through and thin them. Because if they are too thick, they're not going to go through and give you the proper amount of growth and development. Now I have a couple of videos. This first one is how to start seeds indoors.
Starting seed indoors as early as 10 weeks before the last frost gives you a jump on the growing season. Start by gathering everything you'll need. Use only good fresh seed, carefully chosen for your particular needs and growing conditions. Start in a planting mix or a soilless mixture of peat and vermiculite or other mediums like coconut coir. If you're using homemade planting mix that's made of compost or garden loam, be sure to sterilize it first by baking in an oven at 180 degrees for 30 minutes. This will prevent your seedlings from damping off or falling prey to other problems. Choose the correct size flat or starting pots and be sure to sterilize any that you reuse with a mild bleach solution. No matter what kind of pot or planting mix you use, always provide adequate drainage. Heat is crucial to seed starting. A heat mat will keep the soil in your starting pots at the correct temperature for germination. Covering pots with a loose layer of plastic wrap also helps maintain heat and moisture before seeds germinate. The other important component is light. Even a south-facing kitchen window won't give seedlings the 12 or more hours of light required to keep plants growing properly. A simple T5 fluorescent setup, whether it's part of a system or just a fixture you hang above the plants, would prevent your seeds from becoming leggy. Starting seeds indoors and monitoring their growth is a rewarding late winter family project that gives your garden a head start come spring.
Now here at the very end where it talks about this being a fun family project, when I started looking and researching videos of how to show starting seeds indoors, my little girl who's 8 years old was helping me. And she ran across this video and was so excited and wanted to try how to go through and start your seedlings using some eggshells in the house. And you should have seen the mess that she created when she helped my husband make scrambled eggs a couple weekends ago, just so she could go through and have something to try with us. So from these videos, and when you go through and start your seeds, when you put the seeds in, you can place them in a south-facing window, 4 to 6 weeks typically, before you're ready to transplant them out. And make sure that your seedlings are between 3 and 4 inches tall after that last frost date and when the soil is nice and warm. I know a lot of people who lost their small plants and seedlings when they transplanted them out too early this year, since we had a late frost. Now, applying what we've gone through and learned in the past couple seminars to my specific garden spot and yours as well. So my specific garden spot is over at Lincoln's Community Garden. And I have a nice flat location. It's been used before quite a bit by people before me. So it didn't have very much nutrients in it. As a matter of fact, you can see that the soil is not very dark at all. So some of the farm workers were nice enough to come through and give me some loads of compost that were later tilled into the soil. Notice how much darker this is than the soil that has much less nutrients in it. Now, Eleazar Gonzalez, Dr. Gonzalez, has been nice in going out and tilling up gardens with Nadia. And this is an example of what some of the beds look like, where they've been going through and tilling up the areas for people. Now, before I start putting plants in, after I've probably already bought some of my seedlings because I was so excited, I went through and drew my garden plot out on a grid. That way, and for you, your grid, you might have a 4 by 4 foot by 4 foot garden spot. You might have a 4 by 8 foot garden spot. Go through and get a grid, and you can go through, and I have mine where it's 1 block is 1 foot for every area. But that allows me to go through and start planning, well, what plants am I going to go through and put where? And once I've created a template, I go through and use this template year after year. And as a matter of fact, I save it so that I can go back and see what I've planted where. And this is a nice location for me to keep up with, oh, I put spinach in at the beginning of June and maybe it's going to be too late. Or this is a place for you to keep records, get an idea of what works for you, and write down what doesn't work for you so that you don't repeat that information. One of the things that's useful to go through and label is where is north and where is south, because your north side of your garden is going to be the back of your garden. So you'll want to go through and plant your tallest plants there so that they're not shading everything else. Now, as I start planting the plants that are in my garden spot, I'm going to draw in some of the existing perennials. So there are asparagus that come up in the very center of my garden. I've drawn those in. I also have plants that I know that I'm going to put in, and I happen to have enough for 3 rows of 9 tomato plants to go through and put in. I also had some pepper plants. I had some starts of corn that were coming up and a couple of cucumber plants that I know where I'm going to go through and put them in. So after I've put in or lined up the plants that I'm going to have, and here's an example down here for somebody's 4 by 4 bed, they might put in a couple of tomato plants, a pepper plant, and a zucchini plant. So you give it a rough idea of this is the space that I have, and then you can start thinking about what seeds you might want to add in to fill in the areas. Now, I like to try to mix things up with companion plants. Oh, before I talk about companion plants, I've got a quick video I'm going to show you on how to make your own garden identification markers. Because when you go through and start putting seeds into your garden, sowing them directly into the ground, sometimes you don't really know what you have where. And this is a nice way, a very inexpensive way to use your seed packets that you've gotten to make your own row identification markers.
Today I'm going to show you how to make some very inexpensive plant identification markers using items that you would have in hand. So we start out with the seed packet that you used for putting your plants in, and some large popsicle sticks, as well as some packing tape that's clear. Now, the advantage of doing it this way is that they will be able to go through and withstand the weather and show you what plants you have placed where. It will be very easy to go through and seal them up at the edge and cut everything off that's not needed. But this way it'll be weather resistant. There we have it. Plant identification markers that will go through and withstand the weather for the season.
Now, after I've gone through and planned out my garden, I'm going to start thinking about, since I know my large plants, what am I going to go through and fill in around the edges? Now, if you think back to my garden plan, I have lots of space in between my plants. Well, any place that I have space between a plant, I could go through, and any place that I had space between the plant is a place that a weed could grow. And so I'm constantly thinking about what else can I go through and fill in these spaces. So when I go through and figure in what I'm going to plant side by side, what I'm going to fill in, I start looking at companion plants. Now, companion plants are going to go through and they help each other grow and help you use the space in your garden more efficiently. So when you think about space efficiently, you can plant tall plants so that they provide shade for some shorter sun-sensitive plants, kind of like lettuce, that need much less sun as it gets warmer. You can use vines to go through and cover up the ground. Vines can also go through and grow up your tall plants, so they can grow up those stalks so that you have a couple of plants that can go through and occupy the very same space, so you're more efficient. Plants can also be companion plants when you're looking at one helping out another. So sometimes they're helpful because they repel harmful organisms that might come through and gobble up the bugs. So some of them might lure bad bugs away. Some might go through and attract pollinators. That's one of the reasons why I like to add flowers to my garden, for attracting in pollinators. Others go through and add nutrients to soil, like your legumes. These go through and fix nitrogen and put them back in the soil. So this is table 4 from your companion planting guide, from the Gardener's Entrepreneurship Guide. And it gives you some of the most common plants that you have that you put in your garden, and some ideas for companion crops to put in there side by side. So on this next slide that I show you, when I was going through and examining, well, what can I put in to fill in the spaces, I was looking at these options here for your companion crops. So again, my thought was any place that a weed could grow, you could have had another plant there. You could have had another vegetable, you could have had a flower. So I looked at our options for this 4x4 garden where you've got a couple of tomato plants, a pepper plant, and a zucchini plant. And I started looking at, well, what could I go through and plant side by side? So here we've got some lettuce that would fit right in here well, and spinach. I could add some herbs where you've got basil that's in here, and onions and dill and parsley and oregano. Here are some marigolds that I thought you might want to add in. Marigolds are going to do a good job of repelling harmful insects. And it's just pretty to have the extra flowers in the garden. In my big garden, I planned on putting big sunflowers all across the back, and I put in a couple varieties of them. I had space for some artichoke plants that I was so excited to try. We may not have enough time to actually produce artichokes, but I thought that would be lots of fun. I've got zinnias over here because I like cut flowers, and I just think it's just too pretty. I've got the cucumber plants. Well, I also went through and added more cucumbers by seed, some unusual varieties. And I went through and I added in morning glories. So that's what these little blue dots are. So I put in some seeds for morning glories to come climb up, just so that the trellis is pretty as well. Now, when I was looking at the companion plants, I was trying to figure out, well, what can I plant side by side? And I saw on the back of a seed packet, they said that you could plant beets and radishes in the very same row, because as you go through and when you're planting the radishes and beets together, your radishes will come up first and they will quickly line up so that you can see where your row is, acting as a row marker. And then when they get close to the time of harvesting, which is much earlier than the beets, it's time for you to thin out your beets, and your beets would need more space. And so you can put them there side by side. So I have my radishes and beets that are here. And I went through and examined the back of the seed packets and figured out, well, how much space does it say that I should leave between my markers or between my rows? And I used this, my grid pattern where each one of these blocks is 1 square foot. I used that to go through and figure out how much can I actually fit here in this garden. And here on the side, I have a combination of squash and dill, which are companion plants that I put in there together. I have green beans and wax beans, and these are both bush style beans, so they don't need a trellis to grow up on, but these are also good nitrogen fixers for putting nitrogen back in the soil. And I've got them here side by side with my okra. So this is what my garden looks like, and a possibility for your garden. I'm so excited to hear, as you all start putting plants in your garden, what you've decided to put in. Any questions?
Good. Thank you, Dr. Jessica. We were enjoying the distribution of the plants in the garden. All of that made a synchronization to make the garden more productive. What you had questions at this time? It is the time to respond. You can send it in the chat, or also you can speak it up. I'm going to mute everybody right now, so you are able to talk.
And I am not seeing the chat. When I have, oh, here.
The chat doesn't have any questions right now.
Okay.
Hi, can I say something?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. In planning what to sow, I know here we have problems of animals like rabbits and deer. Are there any plants which can help repel or to keep away animals?
Well, I don't know that you're going to necessarily be able to plant something that you want to eat that would repel your rabbits and your deer. The marigolds are great for maybe helping to repel some insects, but your large plants, we struggle with rabbits, deer, and groundhogs. I'll go back to this picture of the community garden. We have fenced in all the way around. We even have some netting, and the groundhogs have figured out that they can headbutt that netting and get through.
I might also add that I think that Dr. Nadia, that's okay, that sorry, Amy, that Dr. Nadia and very likely Dr. Coates and Mensa will also talk about dealing with some of the pests in some of the future webinars, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to add my 2 cents in my home garden. I don't know that there's a plant I can use, like Jessica said, that I would want to eat, but we have had some success keeping rabbits out, sprinkling cayenne pepper around. They don't seem to like that. And if I brush my dog, I get a big wad of dog hair, and I've sprinkled dog hair around my garden. And I'm pretty rural and I don't have issues with those things. So I like to think that that helps. I have heard of people going by a hair salon and, you know, they sweep the hair up. They'll save it for you, and you can sprinkle human hair around, but you have to replenish it, I think, fairly frequently, because after the rain and the sun, it doesn't smell like human anymore, and so then it's not scary. And those are just suggestions, but I think I've had luck with cayenne pepper and dog hair.
Okay, thank you.
One thing that my husband is trying this year, he's putting aluminum foil on the fences around his garden. And he says that he's going to try it to see if it'll scare them away, because you can hear the noise.
My mother has tried that. She took foil, like pie pans, and poked a hole in it and tied like baling twine around it and hung them from fence posts. And when they blow in the wind, they rattle. And she swears that works, but I don't fence my garden, so I don't really have anything to hang them from. I think that would work too. And they're flashy and they're shiny, so they change directions and they look weird, and animals don't like that. So that might work. I cannot stop turtles. I have turtles that will come in my garden and they take bites out of my cantaloupe, and I cannot get them to stop that, but I don't have any deer or rabbits.
Well, you can share with your wildlife too.
Well, they don't eat that much, but sometimes it's like, guys, there's plenty of earthworms.
Laura Gordon, she shared a link to from the Almanac Gardener. She shared a link to control rabbits in the chat.
It talked about
one way that
I heard about shaving ivory, or is it?
I've heard Irish Spring.
Irish Spring.
Irish Spring, yeah, Irish Spring.
And I just would like to add that I individually use a protection for my plants. Like tomatoes, for example, I just have I have cages, like wire cage, and it works really well. And we have groundhogs around, and they haven't been able, or they don't seem to be interested. So there are different ways. I just don't like to kill them.
Yeah. Good fences make good neighbors.
It's time for me to go, so I'm gonna take off and go to my next event. So hopefully somebody will send me the notes from this class.
Yeah, we will be connecting with you. Also, I'm going to send you the post-evaluation test or evaluation session. And yeah.
And I'm going to put my email in the chat.
Thank you for coming.
Okay.
Is there more questions there?
I have one about the garden planner. I know that Farmer's Almanac has one, and it just seems like it's very expensive. Is there, do you know, can you give us a link on, you know, maybe something cheaper that's, you know, that we can use on the computer? what I saw on the screen looked really nice, really pretty, and was that a computer generated?
This? Yeah. What I did was I found on Google Images, I just pulled up a grid pattern, and I just made sure that there was enough blocks for the size of the garden. And then on my iPad, I just went through and drew in these pictures.
Cool.
And so I kind of measured it off and drew them in, which is one of the reasons why it's handy to go through and save from year to year. And just like when you, a lot of times on your smartphones, you can go through and you can edit a picture by drawing on it. And that's basically what I've done, was I took that image and just started drawing on it and thinking about what I wanted to put where. So this was nothing expensive other than just drawing on an iPad.
Okay.
I'm kind of old school, and I always go to, there actually you can buy grid paper like at Staples or something, and keep mine in a book from year to year, because I'm one of those old people who likes an old book to flip through. And that one's pretty cheap too.
Yeah.
And one of the best ideas about having some sort of gardener's journal is you can, like for here, I would snap a picture of a seed packet that I liked. If I put in, say there's a variety of tomato, because there's so many varieties of tomatoes. Say you find one that gives you the best tasting tomato that you love. Well, make sure that you write down that, hey, this tomato turned out really great. And what variety it was. So I don't know about you, but I think I'm going to remember something, and by the time it rolls around, I've completely forgotten. And so it's just a place that you can write down things of, hey, this worked great, hey, this didn't. Maybe you give a start to somebody, or you get a start of somebody else's to figure out what you liked, what you didn't, and you can go back to it year after year and build off of what works great and then see what doesn't. This year, we're talking about going through, I don't know if I drew it in the garden, but we had talked about getting some cantaloupe plants and putting in so that they can grow through the asparagus because it's so light and airy. So just different things to try. It'll be interesting for me to see if my artichokes even come up so that I can go through and either get them again or be like, well, I learned that just doesn't work. So it's just a fun trial and error, and it keeps you from forgetting stuff.
Okay.
Good job. Hey,
yeah.
I am sharing right now the after survey evaluation. After you take the class, we also are looking to know to what extent this class was helpful to you. You get good information. What do you think? You had a chance to answer it. Will be great at this time. It is 6:14 now. We have 1 minute left. And if you are in a cell phone and unable to answer it, you can answer it later. But just want to post that to you, so if you feel that you want to answer it now, go ahead. Let's continue with our discussion now.
I like the cucumber thing too. That really makes for a cool entrance. Yeah. So, and the cucumbers are just planted along that
along the bottom. And it was made by a full-length cattle panel that was just bent over. And so they climb up it. But if you ever get a chance to stop by Lincoln University, this is the community garden. So we've got it right.
I'm from Columbia, so
if you're
I don't get to Jefferson City very much. Yeah.
Keep your eye on our website and look for some of our Facebook pages, and we'll be posting pictures.
Oh, there we go.
What is the Facebook page?
I didn't know we had a Facebook page.
Oh,
the college Facebook page.
Yep, and then I have one too. I'll try to put them in the chat for you.
Okay, good.
Okay. I just want to add that if anybody want to start a little, mean, some of you might not have a garden yet. So this, eventually you're gonna be doing what Jessica is doing. She started very little, as I understand, and so it just, you try year after year, and then you keep adding as you learn.
This was my first year with that big garden. I started out the first time when I was at the community garden with one of those small, I think it was maybe 3 by 6 foot little raised bed areas, and gardened in there. And then the next year I had 2 of those, and then the next year I had 3 of those, and then this year I've got the big garden. But you don't want to bite off more than you can chew, because when it starts getting hot outside and you're trying to go through with water and then you're trying to weed, it just becomes a chore. And so start out small enough that you can handle it, so that it doesn't become something that you don't love doing.
Good idea.
And thank you for reminding me, Nadia. We had talked about that.
Yeah. No problem.
Good. Do anybody has more questions? Any other thing you want to add, or anything we can help at this time?
I guess just to say thank you to Jennifer and to you, Eliasa. And yeah, this is quite helpful. And I think for me, like, I don't have a garden for this year, but it's good to have this information ahead of time, because then it enables me as I plan for next year, because already this information, I have it. Thank you.
And you can always try putting gardening in some pots.
Yes, I do have some pots. So definitely I'm planning to plant. I had some outside my flat. And you know, when I was about to harvest, they were all eaten. I don't know whether it was a deer or whatever animal. So I'm just trying to think. And we had intended to get some fencing, but because of the lockdown, so maybe in the next few weeks we can get some fencing just to put a small bed.
Oh yeah. Well, I remember when I was in graduate school starting out, and I just had a great big pot that I would put different things. I would have some sort of cabbage that was in the back, and I'd have some different lettuces, and it was just lots of fun.
Yeah. So I mean, I've done commercial farming on a very, very large scale. So, but it's different, because like now I have to put my thoughts. So some information I know, but it's different when you're now planning for a small garden. And this is really something which is interesting and useful. Thank you, Jennifer.
One commercial. We are still working on the family gardens. This weekend we will be working in Colombia with a couple of families there.
Okay.
And this week we work with Paki here in Jefferson City. And we may have room for more, because some people who registered for the garden, some of them haven't been able to take the webinars, and we don't know how to. We are looking at a way to connect with them again, but one of the requirements for making a garden to the families is to take these webinars. Okay. We are kind of being flexible. If you have somebody in the community who need a garden right away, we can start breaking the ground with a tiller and showing her how to start the garden.
Yeah, and I'm also grateful through Live Well by Faith. Here in Columbia, Boone County, we have a number of their lifestyle coaches who have joined this training. So from there, they can also help with the Columbia, people linking with the Jefferson City, and see how we can extend this to individual families.
Yes.
I did have one question about ground cover. It always seems like when you put the seedlings in, they look so small compared to everything, the tilled ground, and eventually they grow tall, but then you start having weed. But my understanding is you want to put maybe a straw bed down so it'll hold moisture, and then there's a fabric also that I've seen that looks really neat.
In my garden, I've got, they've dumped some mulch down for us to go through and use. But if you have seeds coming up, so the areas where I have the lettuce and spinach and stuff like that, those have all been left open. I don't have mulch in through there because hopefully they're going to take up the whole amount of space. But like where I've got green beans in between the rows, I've just cleared it down to the dirt at where I planted the green beans at, and I've been watering, and I'm gonna wait until they grow up just a little bit, and then I'll go through and put that mulch back in.
Okay.
Nadia, what do you do? You're muted.
Okay.
Well, I work a lot with native plants, so and I usually use mulch, and I try not to use fabric because it decomposes. They might say that it breaks. I mean, it breaks apart, and it just I don't like to have it in the soil, so I just use organic material, like natural materials. That what you're saying about the Mr. Doves about using straw, that can be useful too for the big plants like tomatoes. But for lettuce, they actually cover themselves the area.
Okay.
That's one of the reasons why I made those markers, is so I have a spot that, because it's all bare and I'm not sure if it's weeds coming up or what, so at least I know what's supposed to be in that row.
Yeah, and I was growing some collard greens, and also like cabbage and all those similar vegetables, and they are so large that they cover the ground. You don't really need I mean, you have to know the exact distance, so it's not too close and not too separated, and that helps you to protect from weeds.
And you know the distance by looking at the back of the seed packet.
Yeah, we'll learn a lot more. I mean, this is just the beginning. And if I'm here to answer questions, like we all are, to answer questions if anybody has any questions in the future.
Good. I will remind you about the post-test we are doing right now. I posted again. I don't want to bother you too much. Did you help us with that? We will be so happy too. I had so far one response. Thank you, and we want to close the session today. It is 6:24 at this time. Take your time to provide us feedback. We appreciate you participating in these sessions, and we are getting ready for our next webinars. In the next few weeks, we will have one webinar every week as you had the program. I will send the program again, just in case some of you don't have it right away in your hands, but we'll try to be connected with you and send you the PDF copy of this presentation too. So you
send a link.
Yeah. Do you, Eleazar, do you always send the recording meeting through email, or is there a place we need to go to see? Because like I would like to see again some of the things that I saw today, like the little videos, and I would like to go back and look at it again.
Yes, we are preparing those materials because we want to post them in a special YouTube channel, and they need to be edited a little bit. And it seems like our social media here has got a lot of stuff going on, and they have been a little bit delayed. However, we also want to use them to help other people who have been not able to take the training at the time. We send them, we ask them if they want to take the webinar. We send them a pre-form to fill the survey, and then we send them the connection to the video. So that is also a way for us to keep people involved, but we will make them available as soon as we get feedback from our social media.
All right, tell you what, I will go through and post a
PDF.
I'm going to post a link in the chat, a view-only link for my PowerPoint, if you would like to go through and click on that and save it. You can go through and have a link to my PowerPoint video. There we go. It's a SharePoint link. So you can go in there and click on it. If you want to save that link, you can see everything that's in that PowerPoint. Watch the videos again, everything.
Where is that at?
Do you?
Can you see the chat?
Okay, let me go to the chat. Oh, I didn't have it open.
Yeah, have the chat open. It's the bottom comment.
Okay.
And it's like HTTPS linking you my SharePoint.
Yeah, wait a minute. It has gone away now. Can you hear me?
Yes. Oh, it's gone away?
Yeah. Oh, for me, I have done something.
Oh.
Tell me something. Like later on, I mean, can I go through in and go in again and look at the chat, or once we leave, we cannot?
I think
I will send you those links to everybody.
But can Dr. Gonzalez, can you email out that SharePoint link?
Yeah, I create a group for everybody who is participating, so I'm going to share with them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
See you next week.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye, guys. Good job, Jessica.
Thank you.
Good night. Thanks.
Thank you. Good job, sister.
Great job.
Did you get the link, Dr.
El estado tiene un minuto.
Yeah. Yes.
Solo quería pedirte que por favor no se te olvide mandarme
la dirección.
Y lo siento. ¿Me podrías también enviar la información de Nadia para que pueda ir esta semana a ver lo que tiene allí en Lincoln? Por favor.
Nadia, ¿le puedes dar tu correo?
Ahorita se lo pongo aquí, en el chatting.
Es que no puedo ver el chatting. Es que no sé lo que habré hecho.
Te lo mandamos.
I will send you an email.
Okay, great. Gracias.
Okay. De nada, mucho gusto, Paqui.
Igualmente, Nadia. Gracias, hija.
Okay, bye-bye.
Chao.
Okay, I just would like to ask you to remember to send me the outline so I can prepare my presentation this week.
Yeah, let's start in the phone. Sounds good?
Okay.
Good. Okay, guys. I will see you later, everybody. Thank you.
Ciao.